Hello, you're listening to Count Richard Rodden Coudenhove Kalergi and a generator. Let's go through some of these sound. Today is Thursday, the 26th of January. Good to see you. Alright. How are you? Grand, thanks.
And it is my pleasure to welcome Mary Creedon, who is an SPHE teacher and coordinator, who will cover some of the main changes for all of you to understand in the junior cycle and her concerns on how this will impact children.
How you doing, buddy? How you doing? Nice to see you, man. How are you? Good stuff. How are you keeping?
Good, yeah. All good, all good.
Go, God, eh? Christ and country. How are you? Just nice to see you.
Protect our children. That's what we're doing here today. Thank you. So I'm here today to speak about the new SPHE RSE curriculum that the department will be introducing this September 2023 for 12 to 15-year-olds. And I just want to give you a little bit of background information to the processes that took place regarding the revamp of this programme. So in April 2018, the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment were asked to undertake a major review of relationships and sexuality education in primary and post-primary schools to ensure that it was fit for purpose in modern Ireland. And in December 2019, the NCCA published a report of its review. The NCCA subsequently established two curriculum development groups, one for primary and one for secondary schools, to oversee the development of sexuality education material for schools. The first curriculum to be redeveloped was the junior cycle SPHE short course, and this draft document was published in July 2022. While there was a consultation stage where members of the public could submit their views, there was no official invitation given to parents or teachers to participate in the consultation process. It very nearly slipped under the radar, except for the huge effort made by the Parents' Rights Alliance and the Irish Education Alliance and all other organisations to inform people that a consultation process was taking place. So the social, personal and health education short course has 37 learning outcomes, and it is structured around 4 strands, and it is for 12 to 15-year-olds, which would be first, second and third year students. And it contains relationship and sexuality education along with various health topics, all under the heading SPHE, Social, Personal and Health Education. So I'm just going to bring you to the first strand, Understanding Myself and Others. This strand focuses on developing self-awareness and self-esteem and the physical and emotional changes that happens during adolescence. And this is all very good and it's all very relevant to the lives of 12 to 15-year-olds. However, in this strand, students learn about gender identity, which the curriculum defines as a person's felt internal and individual experience of gender. Gender is what they subjectively feel and is distinct from their biological sex, the sex assigned to them at birth. This is transgender ideology. A boy can become a girl and a girl can become a boy regardless of their biological sex. Does this make sense? No! So learning outcome 1.4 states that students appreciate that sexual orientation, gender identity and gender expression are core parts of human identity and that each is experienced along a spectrum. Wow, this is hugely flawed. This is a flawed learning outcome. Shame on you, NCCA. Gender identity is an ideology, not a biological fact. There are two sexes, male and female. Yet the curriculum states that gender is a core part of human identity. This is not biologically or factually correct. An ideology of gender identity is being deliberately misrepresented to children, and this learning outcome should not be included in the specification. The new sex education curriculum is promoting a model of gender affirmation. How do I know this? I have seen the RSC resources that the NCCA have developed to support this thinking. Teachers have available to them a range of videos in the SPHE RSC toolkit where students can hear the experiences of young people who identify as transgender or genderqueer, and each one celebrating gender transitioning. Handouts and terms and definitions that exist under the gender umbrella are also available. However, there is not one video in the resources to show the regret that some transgender people feel after having transitioned their gender to the opposite sex.
Suicide rate.
Not one resource to tell the story of how transgender people have become lifelong patients to the pharma companies who know that they were sold a lie and regret transitioning and are trying to detransition back. It's all about money. The word detransitioning is not even mentioned in the list of definitions. This is what the NCCA want your children, your 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds to learn. Shame on them!
Shame on them! Shame on them! Shame on them! Shame on them! Shame on them!
The next area I'd like to bring your attention to are classes on pornography. As under Learning Outcome 3.9 in Strand 3, Relationships and Sexuality, the curriculum, I quote, will ask students to investigate the influence of digital media, in particular the influence of pornography. And unfortunately, this is not a precautionary approach being taken. And how do I know this? How do we know this? We know this because the NUIG Active Consent team were co-opted by the NCCA and the Department of Education to devise and deliver consent education as part of the new RSC curriculum. The Active Consent team includes Dr. Kate Dawson of NUIG, who has said, watching porn can be useful as it has very detailed imagery. And she said this on the Ray Darcy show in 2019. How dare she? She wants school children to be shown porn videos to help them understand that such films are scripted and dramatized, and to reduce the shame of watching porn. Shame on her. Shame on the NCCA. She was also part of the WISER programme, which is the West of Ireland Sex Education Resource Programme, who delivered workshops on porn literacy in schools in the West of Ireland so that students will understand and know the slang words for sexual practices in pornography. Kate Dawson, along with another member of the Active Consent, is co-author of the Porn Report in 2018, which stated it is healthy and okay to watch the porn you want. Shame on the NCCA. As NUI sex researchers are involved in drafting the new RSC curriculum, there can be little doubt that this could be a wholesale introduction to pornography and not a precautionary approach. This is completely inappropriate for school children. The promotion of pornography must be removed from the Junior Cert SPHE curriculum. And yes, pornography is a huge issue with our young people. But this ethical porn, as it is sometimes described, is not the approach to take. Would you agree?
Yes!
The next area I'd like to bring your attention to is the excessive emphasis on sexual activity. The RSC program, which your 12, 13, 14-year-olds will be exposed to, has an excessive emphasis on sexual activity. In Strand 3 RSC, the learning outcome will ask your son or daughter to explain the importance of safer sexual activity with reference to methods of contraception and protection against sexually transmitted infections. The glossary definition of sexual activity in the curriculum states it is a range of activities from kissing, touching, fondling to intercourse in all its forms, which involve giving and receiving sexual pleasure. These activities can be solitary or involve other people. This is promoting sexual license and the pursuit of sexual pleasure for its own sake without a focus on the relationship aspects. The preoccupation with sex is the wrong emphasis to be given school children. The curriculum instead should reduce the excessive focus on sexual activity and emphasize instead the importance and quality of relationships in the program. And the last area I would like to bring your attention to is the school ethos. The school ethos will not be respected in delivery of the new SPHE RSC curriculum. And how do we know this? An article by Shannon Maloney in the Irish Independent in July 2022 quotes as a source as stating that every school, irrespective of ethos, will have to deliver it. This is in line with statements made by senior figures in government over the past year or so. This means that schools with a Christian ethos will be forced to deliver the highly sexualized RSE program, which goes against Christian teaching on sexuality, marriage and the family. So the NCCA is proposing this highly sexualized RSE education compulsory in all schools. It is combining RSE and SPHE as a compulsory subject. So the RSE element is integrated throughout the strands 1 and 3. It will make it very difficult for parents to opt out their children from the SPHE class. And lastly, the consultation report on the Junior Cert SPHE RSC, which was published very recently, stated, and I quote, "Students and teachers alike expressed a strong view that nothing should be taken out of the draft specification. This statement is misleading and inaccurate, as I know many teachers would not agree with this. The 300 teachers in the Irish Education Alliance do not agree with this statement. Parents in the Parents' Rights Alliance do not agree with this statement. The Catholic Secondary Schools Parents Association, that represents over 341 schools, do not agree with this statement. We need to remove some of these learning outcomes. They are not suitable for our children." And just to mention, the CSSPA, the Catholic Secondary Schools Parents Association, on numerous attempts asked for representation onto the NCCA development body, but their application was rejected each time. Why was that, I wonder? So to finish, I call on the trust members of all schools, Kesht, Lakela, Urs, the Spiritan and more, to protect the children in your care. Please protect childhood.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for that great information. I'm now going to introduce...
Protect my own children and the children that I teach. Every school has a child protection policy and teachers are required to report any abuse to the principal. The Children's First Act 2015 states that an example of sexual abuse is prompted here.
All these proper
Pictures and pornographic material is available for children to read or view in schools. Parents send their children to school to learn facts. That is maths, biology, etc. Gender ideology is not based on fact and will only confuse and upset children. Some may question their own gender. There is no urgent issue, but it may become an issue if it is highlighted unnecessarily. The ITO you might remember put out a video with cartoon instructions as to how teachers should teach gender ideology to children and how easy and complete
Virtue vehicle.
This training video was approved due to huge pushback. Well done to everybody involved there. The NHS states that gender confusion could well be a phase, and if it's not, let the parents and professionals deal with it. I believe schools should opt out of teaching about gender ideology. And this is so important. Teach them love and acceptance of themselves and others. Teach them about tolerance and compassion. Just as Mary has here, it's a book on the rainbow reads, you might have heard of it, and it was listed and St. Maud's on the NCCA primary curriculum. It's called Spread Gets Spread. When a little man naked, dresses up in his mother's clothes. His mother then teaches him to do his hair and makeup, and they celebrate this. But he has no underwear on at the end. If you could show that picture there.
Pervert.
He's running away with no underwear on. This is total indoctrination and is for 0 to 7-year-olds. And there are many books like this in the schools at the moment that children are reading. So let me tell you about the journey I've been on, and just need a bit of patience because it's been a long journey. I was the first alerted to these rainbow reads on the NCCA primary curriculum, which they've since removed. I wonder why. These books are promoted by Children's Books Ireland, which they now called the Pride Reading Guide. They removed the book, This Book is Gay, which Mary has there, after I spoke with them. But they think it's fine to keep the book What's the Tea in their catalogue. This book is pornographic, and if I read it, I would be arrested by these guards here for profanity. I cannot read what is in these books. They are so pornographic. And Children's Books Ireland are promoting these books.
Shame on them!
Shame on them!
Shame on them!
Children's Books Ireland promoted on their website by writing, this guide answers the questions and the reader might have, whatever their age or gender. Whatever their age or gender. I mean, anyway, on to the libraries. Many libraries bought up these rainbow reads to support Pride without vetting them. I rented the book What's the Tea from Rush Library, from the 12 to 14 reading section. It's got the red sticker on it. According to the Children's First Act 2015, libraries that have these explicitly sexual books are in violation of it. Therefore, they are committing a crime. So I reported this crime to the Garda station, Lusk Garda station, and they started a pulse number. But they said they would not investigate it, as it's not a crime.
Hold them responsible! Hold them responsible!
It beggars belief. I was absolutely stunned. But they did start a pulse number. I don't understand that. So I emailed Fingal Libraries, and they replied that, quote, one of the actions set out under the government's national LGBTI+ inclusion strategy 2019 to 2021 is for public libraries to compile an LGBTI+ reading list. A working group with representation from Belong To, HSE Sexual Health and Crisis Prevention, Public Libraries and Transgender Network Ireland were brought together to develop this reading list with these books and others on it. These books all also have a Healthy Ireland sticker on them, which you'll see there, the Healthy Ireland sticker. They are part of the HSE, and they are hugely involved with promoting these books. So they're coming from everywhere. It's like, if you do your own research, you'll see that. So Healthy Ireland endorsed the document Relationships and Sexual Education 1. And this is on the NCCA Junior Cycle curriculum as a resource. This book is gay, is listed there and states that it's available through HI, which is Healthy Ireland, HSE, at your library. It also has the 210 WHO link, which promotes masturbation and teaching about gender identity and ideology to 0 to 4-year-olds. And that's just the start of it. But the link no longer works. I wonder why. Healthy Ireland also produced booklets for parents called Making the Big Talks, Many Small Talks. The book is gay, it's on the reading list for the 13 to 18-year-old 13 to 18-year-old booklet, and for 0 to 5-year-olds, they want them to understand gender as being a feeling of boy, girl, or other. Other. What is other to a 0 to 5-year-old? This is planting an ideology in a child's mind that could cause them real harm in the future. So, nearly finished. On to the NCCA and the schools. The NCCA is the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment. They recently had the Rainbow Reads list as a resource for the SPAG RSC curriculum, but they removed this list. I wonder why. But they still have the book, This Book is Gay, listed as a resource, and also the WHO 2010 document that encourages masturbation for 0 to 4-year-olds. So I'm asking the NCCA today, why did you remove the Rainbow Reads list? And have you contacted the schools to inform them that the Rainbow Reads list is no longer on the website, as many schools bought up these books and are encouraging children to read them? They already got the directive. So, where am I? Okay. So, parents today, I want to read for you Article 41.1.1 of the Constitution. This is a direct translation from the original Irish version. The state acknowledges that the family is the basic family group unit for society according to nature, and that is, it is a moral institution which has inalienable, invincible rights which are more ancient and higher than any human statute. Any human statute. So parents and teachers, take your power and take action. I would advise you to do your own research. I'm just an ordinary parent. I did my own research. Rent these incriminating books from the library, report them to the guards, making sure they start a pulse number, and write to the county council, TDs, etc. Most importantly, meet with the principal of the schools. You have every right to meet with the principals of the schools. You know, we got out of the habit of it the last few years because we weren't allowed into schools. I wonder why. Yeah? So, discuss this new SPHG RSC curriculum with them and ask, are there any Rainbow Reads in the school? If so, tell them to remove them immediately, as the NCCA have removed them from the curriculum. You as parents are in charge of your children's welfare. You decide what you want your children to learn. Teachers and principals have a duty of care to protect children.
Yes.
Nothing is more important than this. Protect childhood. Protect childhood. Protect childhood. Protect childhood. Protect childhood. Protect childhood.
Protect childhood. Protect childhood.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
in the beginning, I couldn't remember them all, so rather than me quote all of her qualifications, I let her do the honours. Welcome, Dr. Holland.
Hello everybody. So I'm here today just to talk a little about the physical reality of bodies. So I qualified for medical school in the 1990s with an MB, working as a surgeon until my early 30s. My surgical fellowship and MD thesis was in perioperative immune priming and how the immune response can affect post-operative healing after major surgeries. My PhD research and thesis was in bone metabolism, in bone repair, bone remodeling, and in healthy skeletons. And in my working life, I spent nearly 20 years of my life in the full-time teaching of anatomy, embryology, histology, and some physiology of the body, including the reproductive system, in medical schools. So I'm here to briefly touch on congenital conditions. Sorry, talk to the mic. Oh, closer. So I'm here to briefly discuss congenital conditions, which are sometimes being confused or conflated with psychological identities and issues. And I say briefly because they can be complex, and embryology is usually the least favourite or most daunting part of anatomy for students. So I'm going to restrict my remarks to physical sex and embryology. Others here are speaking to you about psychological health and identity, and can speak much better than I can about how to support children with that as they learn about the world and grow through their childhood into healthy young adults during what can be a confusing time in a very confusing world. Even the language is now confusing. I had originally learned that male and female were physical sexes, and those terms are still used for physical sex in many parts of the world, with man and woman now being used to describe psychological gender identities. However, the Irish Gender Recognition Act, which allows people to self-identify their gender and legally change it by signing a solemn declaration, names male and female as genders. The Irish Equality Act refers to gender, while the Equality Act in the UK refers to sex. So the language around this is getting very confusing. The same terms, male and female, are now used in different contexts, and I think now have different meanings in law in different parts of the world. I think the new criminal justice bill says gender means the gender of a person, or the gender with which a person expresses as the person's preferred gender, or with which the person identifies, and includes transgender and a gender other than those of male or female. It's a circular argument. Gender is defined as gender. I had originally learned that sex refers to the physical sex of a body in relation to sexual reproduction, whether a body is arranged around producing sperm or to produce an egg, and in female mammals to support the growth of a baby during pregnancy and feeding that baby after birth. This is different in different animals. For crocodiles and turtles, sex is determined by how warm their egg gets as they grow inside it. If a chicken has ZW sex chromosomes, it grows into a hen. If it has ZZ, it grows into a rooster. The platypus has 5 pairs of sex chromosomes. Those papers are a fun read if you're having trouble sleeping at night. Birds, insects, and fish can be hermaphrodites, but only rarely. Birds and insects can also fly, while fish have gills to breathe underwater. Humans, mammals, cannot be hermaphrodites, and our sex chromosomes are usually XX for girls and XX for boys. Babies can be born with congenital conditions, including those of chromosomes. Girls and women with Turner syndrome only have one X chromosome, for example. Developmental problems or congenital conditions, whether caused by chromosomes or other causes, can occur in any system in the body. They can be so mild that they aren't diagnosed until later in life, or they may be so severe as to be fatal, even with the best of treatment. Cystic fibrosis is relatively common here in Ireland. 1 in 20 people carry those genes of a disease that affects the lungs. Congenital cardiac problems like a hole in the heart happen in nearly 1% of babies. Still, I would say that children are born as boys or girls. So yes, there can be congenital or developmental problems that affect their reproductive systems, which can then affect their urinary or endocrine systems too. These all develop closely with each other and influence each other. As another example, it is possible for some girls to be born without a uterus, with normal XX chromosomes, healthy ovaries, external perineum, and so forth, And this might only be then diagnosed as puberty, when all the other typical changes with puberty are happening to her body, but she doesn't get her periods. For some of these girls, and this is MRKH I'm describing, just under half can have problems with the development of their heart as well, and a smaller number again can have musculoskeletal problems too. It gets complex. So for most children it is straightforward. They are born and observed at birth as a boy or a girl. They may not be born perfect. None of us are. Just come later for his phone numbers, ladies. But they are born as boys or girls. In the fraction of a fraction of a fraction of those where it is complicated to tell, those children need proper diagnosis, investigation. Their families may need genetic investigations and associated specialist counselling, and they may need specialist medical and or surgical treatment for what can be fatal congenital conditions. They may need detailed investigations for other associated congenital conditions of the heart, hormones, skeletons, and so forth. So in my opinion, teachers should not be independently investigating, diagnosing, or recommending treatments, whether social, medical, or surgical, for complex or congenital medical conditions. I personally wonder how close is that to practicing medicine without a license. The data on the medium, let alone long-term effects of some of these treatments are unknown. Puberty is a time when the whole body grows. The heart, the lungs, the bones. Think how fast and high a boy shoots up during puberty. So what happens to the skeleton, to the heart, to the lungs, if puberty blockers are given for not just months, but years? I don't know. I don't think anyone does. The interim CAST report about Tavistock specifically said there has not been routine and consistent data collection, which means it is not possible to accurately track the outcomes and pathways that children and young people take through the service. Also, because the specialist service has evolved rapidly and organically in response to demand, the clinical approach and overall service design has not been subjected to some of the normal quality controls that are typically applied when new or innovative treatments are introduced. So, do they know? Well, more and more people are detransitioning and describing how treatments affected their bodies, their health. None of us are born perfect, apart from this gentleman here. And some babies may be born with complex medical conditions, including of their reproductive systems, but I believe that biological sex is observed at birth and that it is immutable, that you cannot change your sex.
Yes!
Thank you.
Yes!
Well, I'm here as a
Lady
mother
called Mary
and a
Kerrigan,
grandmother.
mother of 10.
And like you all, I love my children dearly and my grandchildren, my nieces and nephews. So I'm really saddened when I hear what's coming into the schools now with this RSE scheme.
Huh?
Please, let us all stand together and fight for our children, protect our children.
Transistor.
I would like to read a poem now by Jim Sherman. I think it's quite nice. It's quite short. Glasses on. There is a purity born in every baby, an innocence that runs deep. I imagine every parent feels it whenever they watch their babies sleep. We not only see it in the way they sleep, but in the morning when they rise. We see it in the way they look at us. It's in their smile and in their eyes. I saw it in my grandchildren and grandchildren, in the different things they'd say and do. And I imagine you've seen it in your children, in your grandchildren too. I'm also sure you've seen it, even if you don't have children, if that was never meant to be. Because innocence is one of the easiest and most endearing sights our eyes will ever see. Yes, if you want to view a little innocence, watch a child. Listen to their sounds. You'll quickly come to realise that is where innocence abounds. And we're not alone. Nature also sees their innocence. But why do you suppose she allows the ladybug to crawl upon their finger and the butterfly to land upon their nose? But innocence is fragile as the years go by. If it's not cared for,
if it's not nurtured, there's a chance that it might die. So I pray, once born, once created, once that innocence arrives, we'll do our best with all our children to keep that innocence alive. For I can think of nothing more distressing, more tragic, and more sorrowful expense than a child who's lost their purity, who's lost their trust, who's lost their innocence. Protect our children.
We are all here today because we have valid concerns. But being here today is only the start. Nothing will happen. The Board of Management, do they even know what's being proposed and the risks? I talked to a dozen principals ahead of this event and they didn't even know this was being proposed. Put your pen to paper. Write a letter to the school, the INTO, the NCCA, National Parents Council, your TDs. Let as many people know that you do not consent. Parents have a sovereign right, as per Article 41.1.1 that Linda read of our Constitution, to opt out of any education which could harm the development of a child. This also puts a budgetary and a resource strain on the education system, and although it may protect our children from the indoctrination, it is less than ideal for me to remove my children from their classroom with their friends. We need to keep this out of schools. You can also go to your library. We visited a good few last week. It was quite an enlightening experience. Go to the library and see what books are in the under 18 section. They label it as young adult. Young adult in most countries is around 18. In Ireland, it's defined in the libraries by 12 to 15. So those books I was holding earlier are for 12 to 15. Write a complaint to the library, Libraries Ireland, the County Council, Roderick O'Gorman. I refuse to call him the Minister of Children because he is not the Minister for my children. Norma Foley and Healthy Ireland. Get your pen to the paper, pick up the phone. Don't leave here today and do nothing. As the Natural Women's Council, the IEA, the Parents' Rights Alliance and Lawyers for Justice Ireland, we're going to be working on some really good letter campaigns to really get out to all of them. But we really need parents to write those letters, grandparents, adults. If you don't have children, you're an adult. It's your job to safeguard the children in this country. And last but not least, I feel so inspired and confident now, seeing all of you strong men and women here, that we're ready to take another action today. Linda Kennedy, who spoke earlier, and I are going to make our way to the Pierce Street Garda Station following this event to lodge a formal complaint in relation to the library books that violate both the Children's First Act of 2015, which we have printed out. It breaks the Children's First Act of 2015 and the EU law on the protection of children, both of which I have printed out. I spent last night late into the hours speaking with lawyers. We're prepared to file this case. Please feel free to follow us and walk down with us or send us love, light and support as we bravely go inside. We do not consent. We will not accept the destruction of our children. Thank you all for standing up to protect children. We're not alone and we will win. Thank you very much.
Okay? So what we're going to need to do when we get down there is we have to let the people go in and we have to wait outside, make as much noise as you can, let them know that you're outside, but we have to let the people inside do what they have to do. We can't go live inside because personal information is going to be handed over, but they will be coming out and letting us know that we're getting this investigation started, and let this be the start of the hunt of every paedophile in this country.
Nice crowd there. protest about the selling off of the forests. I have to agree with them 100% there. You can see the sign in the back, Save Leitrim. Save it from what? Mass migration? Inward migration? I just got buzzed by a wasp.
How long until you win? That's the question. I don't know the answer to that.
If he had a woman hanging on
the smashing the crowd there. Say a lot of time for that man. That's McGooling there, Grip Media. I'm just saying who she is. Just picked up this here. The gentleman I know in Galway has all of the 15 native Irish species of trees, and he believes that they support a biodiversity of up to 5,000 different fauna and fauna. Compare that to a pine forest. If you go into a pine forest, all you hear is wind. They do.
You can add on to
Too nice.
Too nice. We watched the two pounds already. So we can start with this mask.
That was awesome.
They're not going to sign us for everything.
Already. Some of it. Sorry, how are you? Kevin, here's a question for me. I've never heard of any I think I have. Right. I'm supposed to call the father of migration. It looks like they're moving I mean, it doesn't make it small.
Yeah, they're really good, yeah.
What's going on?
I was talking about people.
Oh, you're next door. What does he say about
Oh, she'll please with everything.
what?
Okay,
Yourself and Sharon Kilgan.
Yeah.
Two people talking.
I told you to get a plane ticket for that.
Oh, I didn't have to.
Charlie Flanagan there, sold the Marrakesh political declaration.
You was, yeah. You did different politics to yourself, though, didn't you? Yeah, well, at least you was a patriot.
And the Marrakesh political declaration being signed by as well in December 2019. Oh folks, look at this. What a little surprise here. Kalergi plan, how about that now? Gotta wonder who's doing that.